Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a founder, investor, as well as entrepreneur, no other than Mr. Crom Carmichael.
Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous, fabulous, Mr. Crom. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. I'm Crom Carmichael. I was born in South Bend, Indiana. Attended Vanderbilt University way back in the late 60s. I've lived in Nashville, Tennessee ever since. Ran my own companies for about 25 years. And then for the last 25 years, I've been kind of what you would describe as an angel investor, investing in early stage companies. I think you'll find interesting is Daniel, I did talk radio as a panel member for about 20 years from 1985 through 2005 for a station that was in Nashville, Tennessee that covered the Middle Tennessee area. I was a panel member. The show was the Teddy Bart Roundtable.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Crom, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about healthcare reform. What can you say about this topic?
Well, I'd like to give kind of a quick overview before we get into the reform parts of it. But
Go ahead.
healthcare is a five. It costs the total cost of healthcare, including insurance, providers, everything. We spend $5 trillion now on
Yes.
healthcare in this country. It's by far the most expensive industry that we have, and the problem with healthcare and the reason it is so expensive is that over 50% of healthcare is the payment system. And so let me describe what that means.
Go ahead,
When you go,
mister.
if you go fill up your car or your SUV with a tank full of gasoline, it might cost you say $50. And when you do that, you put your debit or credit card in the pump, and then the third party payment system takes $1 of the $50 to move that $50 from your account to the gas station's account, and then the transaction is completely over. If you go to the doctor's office, you give them your insurance card, and then you go see the doctor. You have no idea what the cost of the visit is going to be, and then you go home. You might have to pay a copay at the doctor's office, and then you go home and you'll get what is called an EOB. We all get those in the mail, and the EOB is the explanation of benefits. And it might say that you have to pay that doctor. You would have had to pay that doctor $250, but that the insurance company has negotiated the price down to $160. And then you will eventually get a bill from the billing company that says that if you still haven't met your copay, that'll take the $160, subtract the 30 that you paid in your copay, and you'll have to pay $130 because you haven't met your annual deductible. And if you had just gone to the doctor in the first place and paid for the doctor visit at the time of the service, it probably would have cost you $60 to $70. So you're ending up having to pay twice as much as you would otherwise have to pay, and then you're having to pay an insurance company $1,500 to $2,000 a month for a family to negotiate your prices at a level that's twice as high as it should otherwise be. And I know this because for me, for the last 35 years, I have negotiated a lot of my healthcare costs by just telling the provider that I didn't have insurance, and then asking for a cash price. And I find that I get discounts of anywhere from 60 to 75% of what the insurance company pays the provider by just asking for a cash price and paying it in full, and removing from the provider all of the cost and necessity of dealing with an insurance company. And so if I were going to give a suggestion, and let me before I give the suggestion, let me talk about how we got where we are, because this is really important, because our healthcare system is a very unnaturally designed system. So how did it get that way? In the At the end of the Second World War, President Roosevelt, had put on wage and price controls, and toward the end of the war, business people went to the president and said, "Mr. President, we're making a lot of money now. We don't mind if you keep the price controls on, but would you please take the wage controls off so that we can pay our employees more money?" And Roosevelt said, "No, I will not take the wage controls off, but I will let you pay for their health care." And that was the beginning of the third party payment system. And so that then became where the employer could deduct the cost of the insurance or the cost of health care that he was providing to the employee. But if the employee didn't take the benefit from the employee could not deduct the cost of health care from their salary. And so naturally, all employees wanted their employer to pay for the insurance, or to pay for their health care. Well, the only way that the employer could do it was to have an insurance program. And so in the 50s, the private sector labor unions included health care in their union contracts. And then in the 60s, the federal government passed Medicaid and passed Medicare. And then in the 2010, the Obama administration passed Obamacare. And so there's only about 20 to 25% of the population is now in the boat of having to pay very high premiums for their health care, and all of it is, and the rest of it is covered by either very wealthy, very well established companies that provide very expensive healthcare insurance, provide that to their employees, or if they work for the government, at the federal, state, or local level, they generally have a very good insurance plan, and that is what is driving the cost of healthcare, and frankly is probably the biggest contributor to the regular increases in the national debt. So the solution is to expand the number of HSA accounts, and we now have 80 million people do have HSA accounts, which is very good. And then to just simply have the national government require all providers to post or to publish a cash price that people who have HSAs can simply pay for their health care the day of service from their HSA account. And that would reduce the total cost of health care, or those particular procedures. It would reduce it, as I said, anywhere from 60 to 75%. And the other benefit that would do is for younger people, the HSAs, if you don't spend the money, then it accumulates in your own name. And so the benefit is that healthier young people would accumulate wealth by remaining healthy, and the HSA would continue to grow, and give them, it would end up becoming a retirement plan.
So, Mr. Crum, in your view, what are the biggest flaws in the current healthcare system that reform needs to address?
Yeah, and the biggest problem is the third party payment system requires that every insured person have what is called an annual deductible. And because there's an annual deductible, it means that the insurance company has to have a record of every single expense. And so, for example, let me compare that to operating a car. People operate a car. Everybody who operates a car has car insurance, but the car insurance is only used if you get in an accident. It's not used to buy gasoline. It's not used to buy tires. If your transmission breaks, it's not used to repair your transmission. In fact, it's not even used to buy the car itself, and so it's only used for the exception, and that is a car wreck. In healthcare, the exception that should be insured would be the catastrophic or a hospitalization. That does need to be insured because it's A, unexpected, and B, the price is very high. But everything else in healthcare can be paid for out of pocket. And for lower income people who need help and assistance, we would add money to their HSA account, because every lower income person would have an HSA account, and that's the same way we help lower income people buy food. Is we give them it's not called a food stamp anymore. It's a digital account, but people who need help buying food, the government assists them in being able to pay for their food, but they don't have food insurance for everybody, just in order to help lower income people buy food. And so I would approach healthcare the same way, and that is that I would provide benefits or support by having money for lower income people put into their HSA, so that there would be money for them to be able to pay for their non hospitalization out of their HSA.
Mr. Crom, how do you define a successful healthcare system? Affordability, accessibility, or outcomes, or something else?
Well, that's a great question, Daniel. I would say outcomes certainly are important, and we do have high quality health care in the United States. The care is very good. The cost is what is too high, and that isn't money that goes to the provider. So you have to have sustainability over time. And by the way, I'm in the baby boom generation, and the data shows that the oldest people in the baby boom generation right now are 80 years old, and it's at about age 80 that people start spending uh, the greatest amount they're going to spend in healthcare is when they get above 80 years old. And so the baby boom generation is going to start to impact the total cost of healthcare over the next 15 years. And so what we have to do is find ways to still provide high quality care, but to do so at a lower total cost. And the way to do it at a lower total cost is to recognize that the third party payment system is a very, very expensive component. And so we want to be able to eliminate that where we can. And that is for everything except the hospitalization part of healthcare, which does require and need insurance. And by the way, if we did do that, then the insurance companies would work with the hospitals to be on what we refer to as best practices, so that hospitals can provide the best care possible at the lowest possible cost and still make a reasonable profit.
What role should the government play in shaping healthcare reform versus the private sector?
Well, the private sector should provide the health care, and the private sector should pay for most of the cost of health care, but the public sector should support the healthcare needs for lower income people that do need the help, just the same way that the government helps lower income people who need support for buying food. They have food stamps, or the equivalent of food stamps for lower income people. And so government ought to be not involved in the delivery of healthcare, but certainly ought to be involved in helping lower income people pay for healthcare. And then what it would do is, by making providers provide a transparent price so that people can compare prices, that will bring prices down. When I was younger, I had my first colonoscopy when I was 52, my second one when I was 58, and my third one when I was 64. And and each time the doctor who performed, and the same doctor performed all three colonoscomies, he performed those colonoscomies for $1,200 each. When I had my last one done in when I was 64, that was in October, and my son was coming home from college, and he mentioned to me that when he went to the bathroom, he had some blood in his poop, and he had an uncle who died from colon cancer in his 40s. And so when I learned that my son had this symptom, I called the same doctor who did my colonoscopy. I called him and asked him. I said, "Do you think my son, who's only 21 years old, should he have a colonoscopy?" And he said, given the family history, he should have a colonoscopy to make sure he doesn't have very early stage colon cancer. And so we put that on insurance. Now, here's what's interesting. I had my colonoscopy in October, and it cost $1,200. My son had the same doctor perform the same procedure, and the insurance company paid $6,600. $6,600, almost six times as much as what the doctor accepted if he was paid in full. And so that gives you an idea of just how expensive the third party payment system is. And so you do need a third party payment system for major medical, meaning hospitalization. You don't need a third party payment system for everything else. And that would make the relationship between the patient and the doctor better, because the insurance companies wouldn't be telling the doctor what they have to do, and it would reduce the cost of healthcare, I believe, 50 to 60% for that portion, which would save over $1 trillion a year. That's a lot of money, over $1 trillion a year.
Mr. Crom, as a founder, investor, and entrepreneur, what are your short term and long term goals?
Well, at age 77, my short term goals and my long term goals are probably about the same, Daniel, because I look at about a 3 to 5 year horizon. And
Hmm.
I have a number of companies that I am still invested in, that I am anticipating over the next 5 years, maybe 7 years, that most of those companies will have either gone public, or will have had some type of liquidity event, or in the case of probably two or three, and I don't know exactly which ones they'll be, but I have a portfolio of about 30 companies. Some of them will probably fail. I just don't know which ones, but I know that in that portfolio, some of them will do extremely well. And so and I love working with entrepreneurs who are in their 30s, who know a lot more about the specific industry or the specific business that they're in, but where I can add value by giving them kind of a perspective and some business ideas that I have really kind of learned from my successes, and especially from my mistakes in the past.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Crum, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
Well, entrepreneurship. There's read there's some very fine books, and I don't really know which titles to give on entrepreneurship, because a lot of it has to do with, if you're interested, for example, in AI, which a number of the businesses that I'm invested in are now beginning to use AI for different reasons. AI will increase productivity at an astounding rate over the next 10 years. It will displace a lot of jobs, but it will also create a lot of new jobs. And as a society, the idea of embracing things that increase productivity means that our standard of living can go up, because the standard of living of a society cannot go up unless the level of productivity of the members of that society increases. And so I think reading history books about particular industries. I think reading history books about business leaders in the past. I think you learn principles, you learn business principles, um, and there's just a lot of material that's out there. I would also say this, that the older I get, the uh, the more important it is, as I look at society, for people, especially in the United States, to understand the nature of our government, and the and why it is organized the way that it is, because there's a lot of conflict right now, a lot of polarization in the country. And I would encourage every one of your listeners to listen to the or to read the Declaration of Independence very, very carefully. It's not long at all, but it's one of the best political documents. In fact, probably the best political document that's ever been written. And it lays out philosophically what is the nature of the culture of the United States. I would also encourage people to very, very carefully read the U.S. Constitution. It also is not a very long document, but I'm disappointed, but no longer amazed at how few people have actually just taken the time to sit down and read both the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and to think about uh, our system of government, how it became organized the way that it is, and why it is organized the way that it is. And that'd be a topic, Daniel. If you ever wanted to discuss it, I'd be happy to do that. But so that would be what I would recommend. But books on entrepreneurship are terrific. Now, I will say this: I am not a creative person. I'm not creative, but what I do is I do appreciate creativity, and I have a great appreciation for people who have the gift of creativity. And so most of the businesses that I'm in, that I've invested in, are with entrepreneurs who have an idea of how to do something that's a little different or completely different than the way people have done it in the past.
Yes, thank you for that advice, Mr. Crom. And can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or any projects that you're doing right now?
Well, giantsofpoliticalthought.com is a website that has it has a list of all of the historical thinkers whose ideas have really stood the test of time in terms of making their ideas influential. And some of the ideas are good, and some of the ideas are bad, but all of them were influential. And understanding the nature and power of ideas is a key part of being a well-educated person. And Daniel, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you inviting me to be on your podcast.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Crom, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Crom, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.